Okay, let's have a listen and remind ourselves of the Bach Brandenburg Concerto No. 5 in D major, third movement, written between 1711 and 1720 by Johann Sebastian Bach, which is in the Baroque period, which goes from 1600 to 1750. We have our harpsichord come in. Trills to extend the notes. Fast moving semiquavers in the left hand. Then we have the entry of our ripieno accompanying orchestra. So we now have all 8 parts. We have a contrapuntal texture, stretto. We have overlapping parts, so sharing the tune between parts. We have some dissonance and clashes in suspensions and syncopations. We have some modulations at this point, 2 different keys. And then we have our final cadence, our 5/1 cadence, to finish off our A section in bars 79. Okay, let's go through that and just make sure that we have those notes. Some of the notes you will have already from the first time, the first video. Just to take you through some points to make sure we have them. We have got 2/4, a 2/4 feel with a fast tempo, allegro. And the 2/4 is split up into triplets. This is where you have a little 3 under 3 quavers, and those 3 quavers happen in the same time as 2 quavers. So you get da 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 da. Now that feel could also be written in 6/8, which has its quavers, 3 quavers grouped together. So you have 2 lots of 3 to make up your 6, which give that same da 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 feel. Now the da 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 feel is part of what a jig dance style might use, 6/8 feel. Now it was very common in Baroque period for the third movement of a concerto grosso to be in a dance style, and then this is dance style, a jig style, which is an upbeat 2-feel movement. So whereas in 6/8 you might have a crotchet and a quaver, here we have a dotted quaver and a semiquaver creating that dotted feel. Remember that we have a concertino in a concerto grosso, a grand concert. We have a tiny concert going on, and that's the flute player, the violin player and the harpsichord who are part of the concertino part. Then we have a ripieno. The ripieno is an accompanying instrument, which is usually a string orchestra, and here it is a violin, a viola, a cello, and a double bass. When they come in, we can hear the opening subject. It's called a subject because this is like a fugal entry. A fugal entry means it happens at the 5th, but in this piece we also have what's called canonic entries, which work like a round, so the same thing repeated after itself. So here we have our subject played by the violin, bars 1 and 2, with that da da ba da ba da 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 dum, and then we have the answer, which is upper 5th in the flute part in bars 3 and 4. If you move these notes, apart from the first 2, and they've been inverted, so it's a tonal answer, not a real answer, but the rest of it, the D, up 2 lines is an A up 2 spaces is an E, so it's upper 5th each time, the B to the F sharp. This whole section here is upper 5th, so it's a fugal entry. Underneath the answer, it's called a counter subject because it's countering, it's coming up with another idea underneath in a counter subject. So we have monophonic, at the start because it's just one instrument playing. Then we have a 2-part entry, and then in bar 9 we have the left hand part of the harpsichord is then doing an exact repetition of what the violin played but down an octave, and then 2 bars later in its right hand is playing exactly what the flute played in its right hand. The only difference is that a harpsichord can play more than those 2 different notes. And underneath here, underneath the harpsichord part in bar 9 and 10 are some numbers. It says 7 and 5, 3 and 8, I think 9. And that means that the harpsichord player plays those notes above the bass note. And this is called figured bass. In Baroque period, you wouldn't be guaranteed to have 4 violins, 4 violas, 4 cellos and 4 double basses or combinations of that. You might only have 1 of one instrument and 3 of another, depending on who was available at the time. There weren't the musicians that are available to us now. So the harpsichord used to fill in the parts. So the harpsichord player was very important in the Baroque period. Fill in the parts of the people who weren't there. They would also conduct it. And this role, they've got an accompanying role as well as a solo role as part of the concertino. So as we watch this go through, we have those 3 parts, 3 or 4 parts, if you count the left hand, of the concertino playing together in bars 14 all the way up to bars 29, where the ripieno comes in. And you get the 5th entry, the 6th and 7th throughout the viola, cello and double bass, and then the violin. So you have all up 8 parts playing by bar 29. Just to go back and just talk about keys in those opening bars. We're in D major. We know we're in D major because of the key signature, and all the notes in bars 1 to 12 have got no accidentals, no sharps next to them, no naturals and no flats. So only notes of the key signature until you get to bar 12 in the flute part where you see a G sharp. You also see a G sharp in the flute part in bar 25. In bar 14 you see it in the harpsichord part and 15, and in the flute part in bar 15 a G sharp. So it's now moved to A major because it's got F sharp and C sharp from the key signature, and G sharp is being added, which makes it A major. To work out a major key from sharps, you go to the last sharp and go up a semitone. From G sharp, up a semitone is A. As you move along this line to bar 24, in the harpsichord part, you now see D sharps being added. So now we have an F sharp, a C sharp, a G sharp, and a D sharp. So now we've moved to E major. So what happens in bar 25 is that we have a chord 5 to chord 1, a perfect cadence in E major. And then you can see the G sharps keep going, and then they become naturals in bar 29 as we move back to A major, and then we move back to D major again. Now, moving from D to A to E is called a circle of fifths, because D, count D as 1, D, E, F, G, A is 5, A, B, C, D, E is 5. So you have a circle of fifths. Okay, moving on to bar 35. We're now back in D major in bar 37. And then we have in bar 39, 40, we have different entries of this dotted figure happening one after each other. So the tune is being shared amongst itself, and that's called stretto, overlapping parts. Now this is called a contrapuntal texture. We've known it perhaps before as being polyphonic, and there's nothing wrong with polyphonic. They pretty much mean the same thing. Contrapuntal just might appear in a question as an option for texture. What's the texture at this point? And they might not have polyphonic there, and they might have contrapuntal there. It's just one to remember and watch out for. In bars 53, 54, we have overlapping parts. We're answering from one side to another. So we have our flute, our violin, and our violin in our ripieno, and they are answering the harpsichord part, the harpsichord trill, long note by the triplets, and then it plays triplets and long notes. And it creates a question and answer, a bit like an antiphonal, a bit like a panning effect from left to right. In bar 55, we're moving back to A major because we start seeing G sharps in the accompanying parts. They have quite an interesting melodic and harmonic part happen here. From bar 57 onwards, we have dissonant clashes created by suspensions. These notes are being suspended by ties, which is creating a syncopated feel across the beat. And then, for example, the A, which is in the violin part in 58-59, that A is actually being accompanied by a G chord. Now, an A in a G chord is a dissonant note, doesn't belong to it. So it clashes, and then it resolves onto a note of the chord, which is a B. So you get this harmonic tension at the same time as this syncopation. And underneath this, we've got changes of key. We've got G naturals in our harpsichord part, so it's moved back to D major. Then we've got a C natural in the harpsichord part in bar 61, which makes it moving back to G major. And then it moves back to D major, then to A major in bars 62 to 72. And we have this contrapuntal texture with lots of things going on. It's very difficult to follow the melody at this point, which leads up in sequence, rises up to its perfect cadence at bar 78, 79, a chord 5 going to a chord 1 in D major to end section A. And then we have the B section that starts in B minor. It's got a pedal B. At the bottom it's got A sharps. I'll talk about that in a separate video. What's good about this piece is that it's in ternary form, which means it goes A, B section, A. And the A section returns in bar 233 to 310 and it's exactly the same. So it means we don't have to look at that or mark any notes on those bars at all. B section is just an expansion of the melodic eye and the rhythmic ideas from section A.